Good day, and welcome to this special Wednesdays with the World webinar entitled People on the Move, focusing on forced migration from the perspective of those who have been displaced and featuring partners who are involved in offering appropriate responses to those who are in need of assistance along the way. My name is Peter McCary, and I serve in global ministries of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ and United Church of Christ as Global Relations Minister for the Middle East and Europe. We are pleased to host today's webinar, which is co-sponsored by the Federation of Protestant Churches in Italy and its program, Mediterranean Hope, the Presbyterian Church USA, and the Reformed Church in America. I would like to start by recognizing and thanking my colleagues and counterparts for their commitment to this effort and to a shared witness and engagement on the issue of migration. Marta Bernardini, who is the coordinator of Mediterranean Hope, the refugee and migrant program of the Federation of Protestant Churches in Italy. Luciano Kovac, the area coordinator for the Middle East and Europe with the Presbyterian Church USA. And Scott Engelsman, Associate Director of Global Mission, Supervisor of Mission in Europe and the Middle East, and Disaster Response for the Reformed Church in America. I would also like to thank Rebecca Trout, Minister for Global Advocacy and Education here in Global Ministries, for her work in managing, preparing, and setting up our webinar, and Brooke Canada in the UCC's Marketing and Communications Department for her behind-the-scenes tech support today. Thank you all. The number of people forcibly displaced from their homes and communities is at an all-time high, now over 100 million people worldwide, and continues to grow. Due to violence and conflict, natural disasters, climate change, and other social, political, and economic factors, people have been uprooted and are seeking safety and security elsewhere. In 2019, the UCC and Disciples adopted parallel resolutions at our General Synod and Assembly, respectively, called On the State of Global Forced Migration. In that resolution, we affirmed a vision of God's family that is all-inclusive, accepting, and welcoming, recognizing the dignity of every human being, and rejecting the divisive discourse of fear, xenophobia, bigotry, and racism that pervades the discourse on global forced migration. Our churches called upon our governments to take the issue of global forced migration seriously, leaving behind partisan discourse and promoting actively the principles of the United Nations Global Compact for Migration. Presbyterian, Reformed Church, and Disciples and UCC partners are directly involved in assisting people who have left their homes, responding to their needs, and providing assistance and care, and are engaged in advocacy. In January, we convened a special ecumenical and regional consultation hosted and co-sponsored by the Federation of Protestant Churches in Italy that centered on internally and externally displaced persons and migrant and refugee justice. We all worked together to determine and facilitate conversations between church and migrant communities, political figures, and activists. Our themes included learning about and addressing the root causes of forced migration, working toward welcome, and re-engaging youth. To do so, we were deliberate to center the voices of people on the move and our practitioner partners, and to develop contextual action steps. As part of our follow-up, we are seeking to bring those voices to our churches here in North America, a place where migration is also very much a part of the context socially and politically. So this webinar is an opportunity to do just that. Today, we will hear from partners who are directly involved and from people who have been impacted to hear their contexts and perspectives. We are pleased to welcome friends from 3 of our collective partners, some common and some unique, to hear about their experiences and engagement. These are the Reverend Dr. Riyad Jarjour from the Forum for Development, Culture, and Dialogue in Lebanon and Syria, Mediterranean Hope in Italy, and the Afghan Women's Association. Each of our presenters will speak for a few minutes, and then we'll have a chance to take questions from the audience. Please use the Q&A box for your questions, and you can put those in there at any time. And please feel free to introduce yourselves and say hello in the chat box. Let me introduce our main speakers. First, the Reverend Dr. Riyad Jarjour is president of the Forum for Development, Culture, and Dialogue, FDCD, which he founded in 2004. As a Lebanese Syrian clergyman, his devotion to fostering peaceful dialogues between Muslim and Christian communities dates back to the mid-70s. A melting pot in Lebanon, in the mid-70s when he was appointed as a minister in southern Lebanon, a melting pot of Christian and Shiite Muslim communities. Reverend Jarjour has convened more than 100 historically significant nationwide gatherings in Lebanon, Syria, Cyprus, Geneva, Oslo, and Copenhagen. Reverend Jarjour remains close to the grassroots and attuned to the aspirations of the people at the grassroots. Having dedicated over 40 years to humanitarian and development work and peace building and reconciliation pursuits, Reverend Jarjour has built a legacy that guides the mission and endeavors of the FDCD and that inspires many professionals and experts. He has served as the General Secretary of the Middle East Council of Churches from 1994 to 2003, and he holds a Master's of Sacred Theology from the Near East School of Theology in Beirut, a Doctor of Ministry from McCormick Theological Seminary in Chicago, and an honorary doctorate in Peace and Conflict Resolution from the Lebanese American University in Beirut. Next, Shaharbanu Haidari, originally from Afghanistan, is a women's rights activist. Following the Taliban's return to power in Afghanistan, she relocated to Italy, and in 2022, co-founded the Afghan Association Women for Women, an association led by women and refugees to empower refugee and migrant women from Afghanistan. She currently serves as the president of ASDD and an advisor in Women 7 Italy. Shaharbanu is passionate about peace building, women's activism, and diaspora studies. Third, Hannah Kumar holds a master's in social work and is currently appointed as a missions partner of the Reformed Church in America, serving as a social worker with Mediterranean Hope. Mediterranean Hope is a project that serves migrants and refugees in Italy and beyond, active in both humanitarian aid in borderlands areas, as well as in the implementation of humanitarian corridors, which is a private reception and integration project offering safe and legal passage into Italy to asylum seekers. Prior to this role, Hannah worked for a U.S. local refugee resettlement agency in Michigan as an intensive case manager. Welcome to all of you. We're delighted for your participation today. Reverend Riyad, would you please begin by sharing about the context and work of the FDCD?
Thank you very much, Peter, for this good introduction. And I'm humbled to hear what you have said about me. I don't have something in writing to talk about. I will just speak about what is going on since 2011 and the start of the Syria war, in fact, when so many thousands of people were involved in the fighting, and there was a big pressure on many communities, east, south, north, wherever in the West, to be involved in that fighting. And so this led to the uprooting of many communities from their land and home where they have been for thousands years or hundreds of years and more. And we have witnessed many communities in the north that were completely uprooted, and the fighting there made people not only be displaced, but it made them, I think, immediately of immigrating because they can't find themselves to be safe anymore in Syria. The issue in that war that many people felt they are not welcome to be there. And many communities, of course, Christian communities, felt they are not welcome, and many Muslim communities felt they are not even welcomed in their own context. And that's why the war has led to three types of immigration. One which was within Syria, and that was what we call displacement of people who ran away from the war in Syria and went to a safe haven where they can feel more safe and took refuge in mostly in neighboring villages and towns that they considered safe to them. The second was, of course, the big influx of Syrians who were involved in the fighting, and they found that they cannot be present anymore in Syria, and if they will stay, there will be a threat of their lives because they were involved in the fighting. So many of the men in the beginning had to immigrate and leave Syria, and their destination was either to Turkey or to Jordan or to Lebanon. And of course, I will go more into details on that later. And then the third, of course, were people who said, there's no way for us, neither here nor in these neighboring countries. And the best is to run away and go to Europe. And of course, this was either through Turkey or through Lebanon. And here was the role of Mediterranean Hope in Lebanon to take so many of those who came here. But definitely, those who went to Jordan were all sheltered in a camp with the Jordanian authorities in charge. And it is the only, I think, a place where they were more in a place restricted to move. The second was in Lebanon, which was very somehow chaotic situation. The Lebanese did not set camps for Syrians. The Syrians themselves started clustering here and there. Wherever they found themselves, they can stay and be safe. And this has led to thousands of people being in camps, whether in the east, in the area of Albak and Arsal, or whether in the Bekaa Valley, majority were there, or many of them went to the south, few went to the mountains, to the Shuf area, and the others were scattered all over Lebanon. This I will come to, of course, when I speak about Lebanon. The majority of the people really fled to Turkey. And thousands of those who went to Turkey, we all know they tried to run away either to Europe or somewhere else. And many thousands were, of course, found themselves they can cross the sea and go somewhere. Many went to Libya, many even went to Yemen. But most of those who wanted to go to Europe were either going from Turkey directly to Greece or whatever, and the rest were going, of course, to Libya, as Libya was a place where thousands of refugees were able to take the boat and go to Europe. The people were on the move all these years. And when the situation was somehow settled, there was more than maybe 12 million people at least outside of Syria. There were several millions inside, and most of these people were in areas near Aleppo or Damascus or in the Qalamun area in Homs city somehow. And many of them found people who hosted them, and many were in camps. Up till now, in the north, there was several camps. But definitely, the war did not end. It is true that ISIS was somehow, they say, finished military-wise. I don't think it was finished military-wise. But ISIS and several of the groups that were involved in the fighting went to the north to the city of Idlib, and that's where they are still up till now. And so many went to the Syrian desert, Al Badia, and they are there. So the problem in Syria that thousands of people went to these areas and they still have their arms and they still are a threat to the general situation. And at the same time, many of these people, although they say they have finished with ISIS military-wise, but the ideology is still there, and the ideology is still stronger than the military one. And of course, for the time being, we have millions in Syria who are still displaced. FDCD is trying to help as many as they can. Most of the people who were internally displaced either settled and found a place to stay, and there are hundreds of thousands that are still up till now living in places that is not theirs and not for good, waiting to see where they will move. FDCD has a big program that helped about 72,000 people to survive. And with recently, of course, and since maybe 7 years or 8 years till now, we have been assisted by the Canadian Food Grain Bank and by the Mennonite Central Committee to feed the 70,000 people. Most of them are in the Qalamun, others in the suburbs of Hama and Homs, and in Damascus in Jaraman. So I'm sorry to say that with the income decreasing to our partners, we are now going to have a cut in the number of beneficiaries, but we are still helping at least 60,000 with food parcels to survive and so on inside Syria. When I come to Lebanon, and that's where the biggest problem now is taking place, I would say that the whole people on the move and migration and immigration is politicized, starting with those who are in Syria and went to Turkey or to Lebanon or to Jordan. But most of you should know that this issue is very much politicized inside Lebanon nowadays. In Lebanon, we have almost 2 million Syrians who are here. Now, maybe there's about 1 million or more that are registered with the United Nations, and they are considered to be legal immigrants here, but the rest are not, and that's the problem. Recently, there has been many issues with the Syrians, and most of the Lebanese parties have politicized the issues, and there's a big struggle now between the Lebanese government and the European community. And I think that my friends in the Mediterranean Hope know very well that the issue is very critical at the moment. And let me just say this. Of course, many of those who are in Lebanon from Syria, they left during the war, but thousands have left after the war because either young people don't want to serve in the army, or because of the economic situation, or because they feel that there's no future for them. What's happening now with the refugees in Lebanon is very critical because, on one hand, the Lebanese government is facing the challenges of the war in the south, the war in the south between Hezbollah and Israel, and between, of course, you can say Lebanon and Israel, has led to almost 100,000 Lebanese to be displaced from the areas and villages in the south and find another safe haven. But most of them are in neighboring areas because they are hoping that somehow one day the war will stop and they want to go back. And many stayed in their villages because they are afraid if they leave their villages, they will not be able to go back to it. But what's going on, that this is one pressure on the Lebanese government, and the other pressure, many of the municipalities in Lebanon have made very strong restrictions on the move of the Syrians in their areas. Syrians are not allowed, for example, to go around after 7 or 8 in the evening till next day 5 or 6 in the morning. And then now, with the last event that one of the political figures was kidnapped and killed, Syrians feel they are not welcomed in Lebanon. And I must say that this is a general feeling. Most of the events took place recently after the kidnapping of a political figure and killing him. And many municipalities witnessed fighting between Lebanese and Syrians. This was so serious. And it was so serious that every other day we hear of a crime or something like that. And van der Leyen was here a few days ago. And the big question now, why did van der Leyen or the EU gave $1 billion to Lebanon to help the Lebanese? For what reason? Is it because a bribe to keep the Syrian refugees in, or is it for something else? Next Wednesday, even the parliament in Lebanon is holding a big session to discuss the people on the move, mainly the Syrians and their stay, and anyone who is not legally registered should leave Lebanon. And this will be a big problem for many of the young people who left Syria because they don't want to serve in the army and they cannot go back there. But don't forget that Lebanon has suffered from the Palestinian refugees. Lebanon has helped the Iraqi refugees who came here, and now they have the Syrians, and this is a big burden for them. The last thing I want to say, Peter, the president of Cyprus also was here with van der Leyen, because many of the Syrians are taking the sea going to Cyprus. And this is a big, cause a big problem between Lebanon and Cyprus, and it is causing many people to die in their efforts to reach Cyprus. So people on the move are in danger. People on the move need assistance, and they want to know how can they stay safe and where they should go. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Reverend Jarjour, for that very helpful context that you provided. It even further connects the realities of North America and Europe and the Eastern Mediterranean in the sense that so much of the discourse around migrants and refugees is heavily politicized. We are already starting to get questions in the chat, but I want to make sure that all of our panelists have an opportunity to speak. So I want to turn now to Shahar Banu to share something of the work of the Afghan Women's Alliance. Shahar Banu?
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. My name is Shahar Banu Haidari, and I'm from Afghanistan. I was a women rights in Afghanistan, and I'm trying now these days to continue my activities from diaspora. After the Taliban regained power in Afghanistan, I had to leave my country due to fear of the Taliban. And like me, there are many girls and women who fled the country and arrived in Italy. Today, I wanted to start discussion with the testimony of one girl who arrived in Italy alone and without her family when she was 17 years old. After she arrived here, she was sent to a faraway village here where she could not go to school and complete her studies. She fled Afghanistan where Taliban banned education for women and girls over 12 years old. At the same time, she could not, unfortunately, access to education here to and due to access to resources. And this is, yeah, unfortunately, this is one of many examples of people uh, becoming more marginalized when they don't have access to information and also support and assistance. ASTD is a refugee-led and women-led association that was founded in emergency situation by 7 women from Afghanistan. Italy was and is one of the destination countries for women of Afghanistan to seek a refuge. When we arrived in Italy, we realized Afghan women who were a marginalized group in Afghanistan would become more marginalized as a refugee and also migrants here uh, in Italy too. So I just want to share a slide with you to show you some pictures and also talk about our uh, vision, SSD vision. Is ASTD envision a future we are all women and girls, refugees and migrants from Afghanistan have the opportunity to progress, empower, and enhance their capacity to access to comprehensive socio-psychological services, including reproductive health care and pathway to gender equality. In alignment with the United Nations fifth Sustainable Development Goal of achieving gender equality. Additionally, ASTD ensures the voice of girls and women within Afghanistan is heard and their rights are protected. So ASTD has been doing different activities like advocating activities and also organizing awareness raising events on reproductive health, on mental health, and also refugee rights here for the Afghan women who are in Italy. So we with AAC organized the first protest to advocate for women rights in Afghanistan, and it is really interesting that it was the first protest was organized by Afghan women for Afghan women, and also we had workshop and seminar for Afghan women refugees in Italy on reproductive health, because many of these women, due to language barrier, they could not communicate very well here. So as we had an expert with us in from our language, so she was trying to uh, provide information and also how these women could access to services here in Italy. So we also are organizing different events, cultural events, and also some awareness raising events here in Italy in different year. And also ASTD was recognized and appreciated for its proactive stance for defending women's rights in Afghanistan by Organization of Article 21 last year. And we had many different events which we collaborated with different organizations here in Italy. And one of our cultural event was Name of Afghanistan, and it was based in Milan last year in 2023 with the organization of ASCS. So we are continuing to do advocacy for refugee rights by organizing the like Refugee Day events with the Refugee Welcome. Refugee Welcome also is a Italian organization here in Italy, and also continue to advocate for women rights in Afghanistan. As many of you know, Afghan women, they don't in Afghanistan, they don't have access to education, to a job, and also even to access to health services. Ongoing activities in these days, we have English courses for girls in Afghanistan, advocacy to end gender apartheid in Afghanistan, and also providing information about the refugee rights and what's going on, bureaucratic things here in Italy to refugee and migrant women in Italy. And here, if you have any question, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Banu. That's very helpful and especially enlightening for our audience. Grateful for your work and for your connection. I want to remind the audience, if you have questions, please put those in the Q&A box, and we'll have some minutes after our third panelist speaks to address those. So please put those in as you think of them. And we'll come to those as soon as Hannah has shared her presentation. So now we'd like to just turn over to Hannah to share about her work and that of Mediterranean Hope. Hannah?
Hello. I would like to share my screen if possible.
I think you should be able to, yes.
Okay. So first of all, thanks to UCC Disciples, the PCUSA, and the RCA for sponsoring this event. And thank you all for giving of your time as a symbol of care and solidarity with people on the move globally. As Peter said, my name is Hannah Kummer. I'm a missions partner of the RCA, serving as a social worker here in Rome with Mediterranean Hope, which is a ministry of the Federation of Protestant Churches in Italy. As you might imagine, the Protestant churches in Italy exist as a minority within the larger historically Catholic country of Italy. And being a minority since before the time of the Reformation in Europe, the Protestant churches in Italy, with particular emphasis on the Waldensian churches, identify themselves very closely with people living on the margins of society, and as a people with a history of persecution. Italy, being located at the very center of the Mediterranean, has always been at the crossroads, or better, has always been a port for landing for migration trends of all kinds and for people on the move. People have always arrived and will continue to arrive in Italy as migrants and as asylum seekers. And as they continue to exist on the margins of society, the Federation feels called to reach out, identify with, and become interwoven with people on the move in solidarity. Here's an image of the Protestant churches that make up the Federation, which include the Waldensian Church, the Methodist Church, the Baptist Church, the Salvation Army, certain evangelical free churches, the Apostolic Church, St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church of Scotland, and the Lutheran Church. I want to point out two key themes which are central to our work in the Federation, and they are one, network, and two, partnership. Network, because it's only through creating a network that we are able to function operationally, to consolidate separate pieces to create a whole and a more complete effort in any of the contexts in which we work, both in Italy and abroad. At a macro international level, meso level of national coordination, and at the micro level of collaborating with local entities and the local communities to create a united front. And the second, partnership, because in each of these contexts of our work, the aim is to co-labor and to do our part within a bigger picture, knowing that our effort is small and can only be maximized through collaboration and cooperation at all levels. This includes the value placed on self-determination and empowerment of partners, communities, and individuals to listen and assess before taking action on behalf of anyone. For these reasons, broadening our network and strengthening partnerships is central. Mediterranean Hope was born out of this calling, which rang out dramatically in the wake of the tragedy of October 3rd, 2013, in which 368 people lost their lives drowning in a shipwreck overnight in the Mediterranean off the coast of the Italian island of Lampedusa. As you can see on the map, Lampedusa is the farthest point of Italian soil, closer to Tunisia than to the mainland of Italy. This tragedy, followed by an intense rise in tragedies and arrivals of migrants by sea, became the catalyst which called the Federation to respond and have a presence directly on the island. Thus, the Federation commissioned the Ministry of Mediterranean Hope, beginning with this initial assignment of sending staff to participate in humanitarian aid, public witness, and advocacy from the island of Lampedusa. Now, 10 years later, Mediterranean Hope has expanded to 5 intervention sites in a kind of hub and spokes model, with a headquarters based here in Rome and a staff of over 30 employees. Beyond Lampedusa, our current interventions are located in Sicily at the Casa delle Culture, which means House of Many Cultures, where staff operate a residential program for vulnerable refugees and offer a center for intercultural exchange for the local community. In the south of Italy, combating exploitation of migrant workers and of agricultural workers. In Bosnia, along the Balkan migration route, through a recreation and drop-in center for migrants and local Bosnian youth. And in Lebanon, with the Humanitarian Corridors project of safe passage for asylum seekers to be accompanied to Italy by plane. Today, I specifically want to highlight the work being done on Lampedusa, in contrast with the Humanitarian Corridors project for safe passage into Italy and Europe. According to ISMU data, which observes migration routes in the Mediterranean, more than 28,000 migrants have died or gone missing in the waters of the Mediterranean Sea since 2014 while trying to reach Europe. Of the 3 main migration routes, the journey to Italy is confirmed to be the most dangerous migration route in the Mediterranean, the other 2 main routes being the western route towards Spain and the eastern route towards Greece. Of the main ports which migrants land in Italy, Lampedusa continues to be the site with the highest number of arrivals, as you can see in the image on the left, with a number of nearly 110,000 people who arrived on the island as compared to the 5 other ports. And that was just in 2023. To the right, you can see a chart of the countries of origin of the people who arrive on Lampedusa, from Guinea, Ivory Coast, Tunisia, Bangladesh, Syria, Pakistan. As is telling from these countries of origin, the journey to Lampedusa is only one final piece of a much longer journey which preceded the final leg at sea. Our staff participates on the dock on call as a humanitarian presence alongside the Italian authorities and Coast Guard, handing out water, a change of clothes, a diaper, offering a word of welcome and a smile when it feels right. And then separately from the dock, our staff document what they witness, write reports, collaborate with civil society on the island, and speak to the public whenever there is occasion. Here are some images of what it looks like for the variety of arrivals and the advocacy work that's being done. This is an image of events that we try to hold as often as possible, both on the island and beyond, to advocate and also to create a counter narrative to what is commonly publicized by the mainstream media. Here is an image of the cemetery, which is a local cemetery that has both Italians, the islanders, and migrants. And when I visited, I took this picture when I visited Lampedusa, and what struck me was that we are all equal in death. And in a sense, this calls out to our shared humanity and the need to understand that we're creating a shared narrative that and a shared memory of this moment in history. So shifting to the mainland, another intervention was imagined as a response. The Humanitarian Corridors Program exists thanks to a clause in EU law which allows entry into Europe with a humanitarian visa. From this clause, the Federation dared to dream a complementary pathway to the traditional resettlement schemes, utilizing this small piece of EU law to design a program where civil society would be the main actor in offering host communities to asylum seekers who wish to move to Italy. The program was designed with Lampedusa at heart to uphold the human right of freedom of movement, to leave one's country, and to seek asylum in another country. And we would like to add, to do so in safety and with dignity. This means pre-arrival preparation to guide people in their decision to relocate to Italy by our staff present in Beirut, as well as post-arrival case management services with a pathway to integration and self-sufficiency in Italian society. In 2016, the first protocol was signed with the Italian Minister of Interior, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the community of Sant'Egidio, which is our Catholic partner, and the first protocol allowed for the entry of the first 1,000 people. From there, a second protocol was signed, allowing another 1,000 people to enter. And then, of course, 2020 and 2021 were the years of the pandemic, and so there was a freeze on arrivals. And at that time, there was also a possibility to brainstorm and think of how could these protocols be expanded to further contexts. And so shortly after, there was the possibility and activation of a protocol for arrival from Libya of 200 people, which allowed entry within the year of 2022. Meanwhile, there was a third protocol from Lebanon, which allowed the entry of another 1,000 people. And as we know, and as we heard from Shahar Banu, the need of Afghan asylum. And so a first protocol was signed allowing 800 people entry, people who are Afghan nationals, but arriving through Pakistan and Iran. And finally, we were able to sign a protocol to allow further 900 people from Libya to arrive, and that protocol will be from 2024 until 2026. Along the bottom of the screen, you can also see that over time, besides the partnership, which is essential with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of the Interior, our partners of Sant'Egidio, which are our ecumenical Catholic partners, we've also increased to other partners, including Arci, which is not faith-based affiliated, Caritas, which is also Catholic, and of course our main funders, which is the Otto per Mille of the Valdensian Church. The reception sites in which the asylum seekers are able to be housed are across 16 different regions of Italy, thanks to the diaconate of the Valdensians. Here are some images of the variety of experiences and successes. Of course, there are also many challenges post-arrival, and the difficulty of seeking integration in Italy and in any new country with a new language and new culture. And some other images here of special events and celebrations. I can talk about community sponsorship maybe in the Q&A, but I'll stop there for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hannah, for this very helpful overview of the work of Mediterranean Hope and the illustrations of the people, some of the people that you have assisted and supported in the course of the life of Mediterranean Hope. Thank you so much. We have a few questions in the Q&A, and Becca is going to relay those.
Yes, so let's start with this first question, asking where does some money come to support refugees? They mention the work of Church World Service that does in the United States, and that the UN is active in providing support. So how maybe do churches work together? I think we heard a little bit, Hannah explained how the Federation of Protestant Churches in Italy works together to support refugees in Italy. But maybe, Peter, you could speak to the work that the churches in the US do to support refugees.
Sure, it's certainly for the United Church of Christ and Christian Church Disciples of Christ, we are engaged domestically, but also globally. So we partner with organizations like Mediterranean Hope and the Forum for Development, Culture, and Dialogue to support the work they are doing to respond to the immediate needs of those who are displaced. And this support comes through the generous giving of our members. Directly to global ministries and also through, in the UCC, the Global Hope and One Great Hour of Sharing, refugee response, as well as for the Disciples Week of Compassion, which supports work of refugee responses, particularly in emergency situations. And the Presbyterians and RCA also have their own offices that support refugee response. So we always encourage and are grateful for the generous support of our members to support the work of partners around the world. Internally and domestically, we also have offices for refugee and immigration services to assist in resettlement and other aspects of refugee resettlement in the US. That's another channel. And we do advocacy as well. And so a variety of ways that our churches are engaged. And you heard already from from our panelists how they are supported by partners and organizations around the world.
Thanks, Peter. The next question is for Shaharbanu. Can you talk a little bit about how Afghan women refugees are surviving economically in Italy? Maybe if there's some skills training programs or other educational programs that's being provided for particularly Afghan women refugees.
Okay. In fact, in Italy, the integration process is really hard. The system is not really designed to easily accept a refugee to giving them job or accepting in the job environments easily without learning English. And the same time, because of the Afghan women, they were sent to far away villages. They could not learning language very fast, so they are struggling actually. And as according one need assessment we have done at for Afghan women here in Italy, almost like 90% of the people who arrived Italy and after 3 years ago, they don't have the job, and also they really don't have economic support from the government, and really it's less money. And we are actually worry about these things, when the women uh, are living in poverty, poor, and also they don't have access to job market, they don't have access um, to learning language. It will be hard for them. But by the way, we have also some successful story from the our girls and women. And the same time, I want to say, uh, I'm sorry, I forgot the Okay, I want to say that after 2021, many of these women who arrived in Italy, they have a really good education background and also experience background. They were working with the international NGOs, but unfortunately, they could not hire in here in Italy. I don't know why, but one of these problems because of the qualification or verification of their documents, education document is really hard here in Italy. So yeah, they are struggling. We are trying to help them. And yes.
Thank you. Yes, I know that's a problem for refugees in the United States as well. They may be a doctor in their home country, but their qualifications don't necessarily follow them to their new country. So that is an issue in many places as well. The next question talks specifically about Islamophobia in the United States, but I want to actually broaden it because we talked a bit before about how refugees and migrants are politicized. So can maybe one of our panelists talks about xenophobia and the ways in which fear and hatred of other people are playing out in your local context in terms of the politicization of refugees and people on the move, and how maybe you work to counter that. Hannah talked about alternative narratives. Mediterranean Hope is trying to provide some of that.
Can I talk about this? So, because I'm coming from an Islamic country, and many of our friends and colleagues, they wear hijab. So they have this problem, unfortunately, Islamophobia. When they are going to a street and they are going to the event, they are telling us, sharing their experience with us that when they wear hijab, people really don't treat very well with them. So unfortunately, but the way we are trying to like navigate this challenge is to organizing cultural events here in Italy to try exchange culture and also to becoming close with the people here and try to show that there is no problem if a woman wants to wear hijab or wants to be a Muslim, and it is not really problem. It is not really a challenge, and we can by the time can I think change this perspective.
I just wanted to add to that. We had this amazing moment last fall where the efforts being made on the island of Lampedusa really it came to this beautiful manifestation of solidarity in a way that no one expected or imagined. For now that we've been there for 10 years, there has been an ongoing effort to, of course, counter the narrative, and that narrative being that the island and Italy in general is being invaded, right? And that the emergency is the invasion of migrants in Europe. But the counter narrative which we wish to offer is the emergency of people dying at sea and the lack of responsiveness in the face of that. So that to us is the real emergency, is the people dying and the need to protect lives rather than protecting borders. And so shifting that priority to a human priority has been the effort of over the years. And then what happened in the pandemic is that so much of the reception, if you want to call it that, of migrant arrival got just streamlined in a sense to Italian authorities. And everything was being done through this quarantine process of a quarantine ship where migrants were held for 14 plus days to quote unquote quarantine before being allowed to port. And through this experience, then it allowed for this removal of civil society to witness and to even be aware. Meanwhile, the Italian authorities and military was taking charge of migrant arrivals and reception. And also, meanwhile, the narrative was that civil society was being asked to take the backseat and not be participating in any humanitarian or emergency reception in the Mediterranean. So this was happening, and as though there was this curtain blinding people from seeing the trends of arrivals and seeing the people actually on the island in a present way. So the reinforcements of the hotspot, which is the detention center or the processing center of the migrants on Lampedusa, became extremely closed, whereas before there was a lot more openness and fluidity from the holding center. People were able to leave the holding center and wander on the island and get to know people, and the civil society was able to be interactive. So within the pandemic, that changed so much, and there was this blindness. Meanwhile, though, the island was getting to know each other better and working together and creating a united front and doing what they could, even online or with gatherings, to recognize who the allies were. And there was a moment in which then this solidarity group was able to really function, where there was a peak in arrivals. I think it was last October, and the holding center was just so full of people that they weren't able to have capacity for everyone. And as a result, the migrants were actually just arriving on the island, and not only from just certain ports, but they were arriving on various spots, even more dangerous spots on the island. And civil society was responding and receiving. Restaurants were donating food. People were accompanying migrants to our office on the island, recognizing and knowing full well this is the site where you can get help. And it was just this beautiful sense of what it could look like if people were allowed and invited into the process of welcome, and realizing that that there is the humanity of it is more important and actually connects us better than the sense of needing to protect borders. So I could go on about that, but I'll say that for now.
That's really a very helpful and uplifting way to conclude. And I want to thank you, Hannah, as well as Shah Banu and Riyadh for your participation and for your sharing today. This has really been a rich opportunity to hear from different places in the world and from different partners. We are all connected. We are all working on this together. It's a global issue, not isolated. And that's one thing that we really wanted to emphasize by bringing together partners in the consultation in Rome, and to hear voices directly from those who have been displaced and their experiences, as well as those who are engaged, so that the community is felt together. Thank you very much once again to all of you who are participating and listening today. We're grateful, and we look forward to being in touch in the days and weeks ahead.